Good afternoon. I have 3 stories to share for you on the spiritual faith and religion segment for today, for Sunday, which is today. And some of it is updates on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and another one is on an abbess speaking out from a convent in Estonia. And so I'm going to start with this one. The UOC lawyer, America funds the persecution of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. We have a video of that, so I'll just share that with you. Let me squish this down a little bit more.
Hello. It's my privilege to represent the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church is a 1,000-year-old church facing repression, if not extinction, by our ally, Ukraine. I want to state, firstly, the Holy Synod stands with Ukraine in Washington with its request for funding and assistance. It is our people, our parishioners on the front line, and we stand with Ukraine and want Ukraine to succeed in this existential battle for its freedom. Of that, have no doubt. But let me assure you, in my 45 years of being a human rights lawyer, this is the first time children of Christ have been repressed with American funds. American support and American dollars are behind the destruction of this church. It was discussed as early as 2014 by Ms. Newland, adopted by then Secretary of State Pompeo, and when they took the Ukrainian church supervision away from Moscow and gave it to Constantinople, nobody ever thought the Ukrainian government would then ban a church. And ladies and gentlemen, in May of this year, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church may well cease to exist. This law passed by Ukraine has been condemned by everyone. His Holiness the Pope, the Church of England, the United Nations, and Human Rights Watch recently have condemned these illegal and criminal actions against the people fighting the war in Ukraine. So you ask, how can this be happening? And the answer is, our government and the Ukrainian government have instrumentalized this battle in an attempt in their minds to weaken Vladimir Putin. But in fact, it's doing just the opposite. They are, in fact, attacking their own people. They are dividing their own populace at a time they need unity. And I have urged my friends in the Ukrainian government, because they will always be my friends, because I have stood to fight against Russian imperialism my entire life, since my arrest in Moscow in 2005. And I have begged them to spare the church, to spare my Christian brothers and sisters. I have a metropolitan dying in jail on bogus charges in Cherkasy. Bogus charges. Our heart breaks when we speak to his family. The same thing with Metropolitan Feodosi. Why are these needless, illegal charges being laid against members of the church? Why have 1,500 churches been stolen from the UOC and given to this new state church? A state church that has icons of Maidan. A state church funded with monies from the United States of America. And I am saying to you that as far as I am concerned, Ukraine must end Bill 3894 and come back to the world of democracy and human rights, which our government and other governments have been supporting with their blood, but with our funds. Attacking a Christian religion is illegal. If you believe somebody is a security risk, charge them with treason. And let me tell you something about the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. It is recognized by other NATO countries. Their Orthodox churches recognize our church. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that was an important thing. I found it interesting that this was at the, let me see, where was it? He presented this at the International Religious Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C. on February 4th. I see that Vice President Vance spoke on highlights religious freedom at summit. This I may play this as well. Orthodox parishes in Western Ukraine seek U.S. protection from religious persecution. I don't know how well that's going to go over. We don't really seem to care about other Christians in other countries. That's just being honest. Parishes of the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church under His Beatitude Metropolitan Onufry of Kiev and all Ukraine in the western region of Bukovina are appealing to the U.S. government and other organizations for protection against the persecution of the state and the violent schismatics. And as you know, at least 2 parishes had made video appeals in the past week, in particular to Vice President J.D. Vance, who has publicly spoken out against the persecution. The UOC has made religious freedom a major part of this platform. It's important. Parishioners of the Church of St. Basil in the village of, I can't pronounce it, in Bukovina appealed to U.S. government agencies about protecting their rights on January 30th. 4 days prior, a group of schismatics for the violent Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which enjoys the support of the Ukrainian state, held a meeting and decided to steal the church from the Orthodox Christians. So this is very recent. The radicals have falsified legal documentation and are also planning a physical attack while law enforcement authorities stand aside and do nothing. A typical scenario that has played out dozens, if not hundreds of times across Ukraine in the past few years. Thus, the Orthodox faithful decided to appeal to Vice President J.D. Vance, who has spoken publicly in defense of the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is experiencing brutal persecution from its own state. I really do appreciate this fact that J.D. Vance has said this. That's good. The parish, and at least they're recognizing it, will anything be done? I hope. The parish has also sent evidence of OCU activist terror to the U.S. Embassy and international human rights organizations, and Bukovinians living in the U.S. are preparing an appeal to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. A church is for prayer, a church is for love, a church is for peace. It's God's house, the appeal concludes. There's a video on it. On February 4th, they appealed to the U.S. government, the UN, the OSCE, other human rights organizations to protect their rights, protect their church from the violent schismatics of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. The parishioners informed President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and others about the schismatic scheme of falsifying documents to steal their church. They also warned that a violent, forceful seizure could follow as is happening throughout Ukraine. The parishioners emphasized that the rector's brother, Archbishop Vasily Zelenyuk, serves in America and will personally help ensure the appeal is delivered to the offices of the President and Vice President. The appeal concludes, we Ukrainians oppose the religious animosity incited by OCU supporters. We love God, our church, our nation, Ukraine. Our native Ukraine and our people. May He bless our land with peace. His Eminence Metropolitan Agafangel of Odessa made his own appeal to President Trump in November to help protect the canonical UOC. So at least there was a talk in Washington to make it even more people more aware of this. We can only hope and pray that President Trump, Vice President Vance will pay attention to this and actually put something forward, like a peace between Russia and Ukraine. And I don't know. This government, this puppet government in Ukraine, it's got to go. As you know, Zelensky didn't even hold elections. Oh, it's a war, time of war. We're not going to do this. Well, it still has to be done. And let the people choose. We need to quit interfering in other people's elections, which we say foreign governments do that to ours. We do that all the time. One more story that's important is this one. Putista abbess to Estonian parliament. You know perfectly well that you're trying to ban us. So in Estonia, they're trying to ban the Estonian Orthodox Church there. Because why? Because their patriarchate is the Russian patriarch. This is how it's been. And like I told you before, that's how the hierarchical patriarchates work. They each have certain areas that they govern, their jurisdictions. Like I said, Constantinople, ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew butted in. He stepped out of his jurisdiction, getting involved in Ukraine with a schismatic church, trying to bring them in, which was just awful and wrong. I don't know how what that would be spiritually, how you would say that in the church, but it was wrong. I'm going to share this with you. This abbess is of the Putista Dormition convent in Estonia. Mother Filareta has written an open letter to the Estonian parliament responding to the new bill demanding that the monastery and the Estonian Orthodox Church leave the jurisdiction of the Moscow Patriarchate. So this place was founded in 1891 with assistance from St. John of Kronstadt, really well-known saint for us Orthodox. Besides the Peskov Caves monastery, it is the only holy habitation to have never closed during the long decades of atheist Bolshevik rule. However, now the monastery faces the possibility of closure because of its canonical status. Though on the territory of Estonia, it is a Stavropegial monastery, meaning it falls directly under the episcopal oversight of His Holiness Patriarch Kirill of Moscow and all Russia. Meanwhile, the Estonian Orthodox Church is a self-governing body within the Moscow Patriarchate. There have been 2 Orthodox jurisdictions in Estonia since the Patriarchate of Constantinople. Since the Patriarchate of Constantinople established a structure parallel to the already existing church under the Moscow Patriarchate in 1996, which is basically a fake, uncanonical church setup. It reminds me of the time of the Arians, early on, and I think it was like the 200s or 300s, where we had so many Arians and their church and their bishops mirroring the real canonical church at the time. We don't want to see that again. I mean, obviously, eventually, they had that ecumenical they had the council. The Arians were banished from the churches and all that because they were teaching error, a doctrine that was not true about the two natures. I believe it was about the two natures, or the nature of Christ, who he was. Constantinople's Estonian Church has proposed the creation of a vicariate to subsume the churches of the Moscow Patriarchate's Estonian Orthodox Church, but the latter has rejected this option. Yeah, because you don't want to be going into a heretical, schismatic church. The church also issued its own response to the new draft last month. In her letter, the abbess plainly states that the MPs know perfectly well that despite repeated statements that the state isn't trying to close any churches, the bill aims to place the church and monastery outside the law, which will result in their closure. So, as she has done several times in the past, the abbess, again, emphasizes that the nuns live in a life of prayer outside of politics. But the state wants them to bear the guilt for statements from Patriarch Kirill about the war in Ukraine, despite evicting the Estonian primate, His Eminence Metropolitan Evgeny of Tallinn, and moving to ban the church. State authorities have never produced any evidence that the church poses any kind of threat to national security. Do you truly want to go down in history as parliamentarians who forcibly terminated the existence of a well-known Orthodox convent in Estonia that has existed for more than 100 years? Something not even the godless Soviets did, Mother Filareta asks. Here's her letter. Dear ministers, dear chairman of Parliament, dear members of Parliament, we are addressing you after reading the draft law on amendments to the law on churches and parishes of the Republic of Estonia. We understand the purpose of the draft law to force the Estonian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate to change jurisdiction and come under the protection of Constantinople. And our repeated explanations that a monastery cannot independently initiate and reject jurisdiction have remained unheard. Lawyers are handling the legal side of the document. We are simply nuns. We have never been deceitful with those in power. And now we say the same to you in society. We are honest in our position, both before God and before people. In the 90s, the monastery completely gave up all property, uncompromisingly and without claims, gave everything to the state for the sake of spiritual connection with the Mother Church. We always fulfill the conditions of the contract concluded at that time. Without a doubt, you understand perfectly well, by approving amendments to the law, you are placing the monastery outside the law, giving only two options, either a change of jurisdiction or forced liquidation. You understand perfectly well that by your actions, you are effectively closing the monastery. Do you truly want to go down in history as parliamentarians who forcibly terminated the existence of a well-known Orthodox women's monastery in Estonia that has existed for more than 100 years? The position of the state cannot fail to surprise us, placing responsibility for the current situation on the monastery's inhabitants, making us responsible for decisions made by politicians. We left the world. We are far from political problems. We live outside politics, serving God through prayer and work. Yet we are literally being dragged into politics and accused of unwillingness to engage in dialogue. We want to remind you of the story of long-suffering Job from the Old Testament, who lived righteously before God, and the Lord loved him. But the enemy of mankind, envious, began to say that Job was righteous only because God loved him and gave him everything. If he knew to lose everything, he would blaspheme God. To this, the Lord gave the devil power to do with Job whatever he wanted, with one condition, not to touch his soul. The soul belongs only to God. Think about this. The initiators of the draft law are forcing us to commit a canonical crime, motivating this by claiming that they are trying to protect the monastery from problems. We will answer with the words of the ancient sage Socrates. Plato is my friend, but truth is dearer. To all the untruth regarding our holy and beloved monastery, we, the inhabitants, humbly respond. God be your judge. Respectfully, Abbess Filareta with the sisters. Well, as you can see, a lot of this stuff is going on with our churches, with my churches. And again, as I have told you, we also have our churches in the West Bank. We have them in Jerusalem, Nazareth. We have them in Gaza, Syria. And we had them in Iraq. We have them all over the place. And they're all in communion together. So, I shared, this is the news I have for you on religious freedom for the Orthodox Churches in Ukraine and Estonia and anywhere else that this may be happening. I think there's also a story about our church in, I think it was in the Dominican Republic, because there was some violence going on there. And I don't have that in front of me, but please, if you could, if you're a praying sort, please pray for my churches. Thanks very much for watching my video. I hope you learned a lot. Please follow my channel, share my videos, share my channel, like my videos, get the algorithms out there for my videos. Thanks so much. Until next time.